A lot of you commented on majority of my YouTube videos asking for a tutorial video on how to mix vocals over a karaoke track. Of course, I won't be able to play a karaoke track or mix an existing song because I will get copyright issues, but I will show you the exact process so that if you utilize that on your vocal tracks as well, then it will be sounding really good. I'm Florina Jain, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and I put out a lot of videos related to music production. So if that's something that you like, then go and hit the subscribe button. So let's get into the video. So let's assume this is going to be my karaoke track and I've got some information over here. So first step is to see the level of sound you get through the karaoke track. And to do that, just open up the inspector, play your karaoke track automatically in this display. Alright, in the second display that you see, you will usually get the number. So it will either be -1 or it might show you 0. And that's because a karaoke track is already mixed and mastered. So you're just going to add your vocals to it. So you don't need to necessarily do any mixing or mastering on that track. They will have mastered it at a certain level. So you'll be able to see it under this peak level. For example, if this is the track and let's just play and see. So you see this number. For a karaoke track, it will be higher. It might show you either 0 dB or -1 or -0.5, something like that. So note that number first. I'm just going to delete this track because I just added it for reference. After you have recorded your vocals, we are going to mainly concentrate on how to mix the vocal track with the karaoke track. So the first step I do is I add an auto-tune plugin, maybe Melodyne. So once I add Melodyne, I click this transfer and then I hit play. So all the track that I recorded will automatically be transferred into this plugin. And so I will fix any pitch mistakes that I did, or if there's any tempo mistakes or a volume difference, whatever that is, I'll just fix everything using Melodyne. Second step is to add an EQ. Add an EQ plugin and remove all the frequencies that are undesirable or that really sound harsh and unpleasant to your ears. Most of the times it will be a low cut. So you do a low cut like this and you reduce some unwanted hum or buzz sounds. So maybe from here you do a small cut like that. You need to check in your track what is the unpleasant sound that you're getting. So go ahead, check it out, and then you need to cut all those unwanted frequencies. So maybe after you do those cuts, the EQ is going to probably look like this. And after you finish this, go ahead and add another EQ. So I usually put under EQ, vintage EQ collection and vintage graphic EQ mono. So I'm going to use this particular plugin to boost the frequencies that I like, mainly because I get a lot of color and saturation out of this plugin and I like the tone out of this plugin. If I want some high frequency lift, then I'm going to do a small increase like this. Of course, when the track is being played, I'll just have a listen and I'll do this. So like that, go ahead and increase frequencies that you think is sounding good when you do that in your track. It won't make sense if you increase, let's say 125, but you've actually cut it over here. That doesn't make sense, right? You've already cut it. So don't increase frequencies where you've already cut it in another plugin. Utilize the frequencies that you've not touched previously because those are the frequencies that you thought did not have any unpleasant sounds. So might as well utilize them, no? So you just use those frequencies and increase them a bit, see if it is nice. But just remember, once you boost frequencies, there will be an overall increase in volume. And we don't want that for any plugin. The purpose of using plugins while mixing is only to have the effect of that, not to increase volume. And so after this, if you also feel like there's a total increase, like you turn off the plugin and the volume is softer, when the plugin is turned on, you think the volume is louder, then go down to this output volume knob and fix it over here. So in order to balance it, I turn it off, turn it on, and then I just bring this down till I feel like the volume is matched, but the effect is heard. So you got to do that. Right after graphic EQ, I use a de-esser. This is my favorite de-esser. It is from Isotope and this gives you a beautiful natural elimination of that S sound. So you can just add this and you can adjust the threshold in such a way that those harsh frequencies, like those harsh S sounds that might be caused because of this graphic EQ, because you increase those frequencies, this will help us to eliminate all those S sounds. The next plugin that you need to add is a compressor. You can use the normal compressor that you have in Logic. Go over to Vintage Opto because this works well for vocal tracks. So you can use this, change your threshold and ratio in a way where there's a very subtle compression that's happening. You don't want to do a very harsh compression on a vocal track, then it's going to lose its natural quality. So make sure you do a very subtle change. So probably my attack is going to be kept in a very medium area, like 15 millisecond, whereas my release will be slightly higher. Threshold and ratio will be managed in a way where the total compression is mainly around -3 dB or -4 dB. And of course, when you use a compressor, what's going to happen is the overall volume is going to reduce because we are compressing. And so you're going to use a makeup gain to balance it. Just a small tip, make sure this auto gain is turned off and this auto button is also turned off. Otherwise, it might automatically set a release time and a makeup gain level for the change that you did, which I think is not needed, and it's better if you do it on your own. So after this is done, I love to add this plugin. This is a saturation plugin. So it's called as Saturn. What I really like about this plugin is that you can split this whole track into different frequencies like this and give the amount of saturation that you like for each of these frequency sections. For example, for this frequency, like I can select this and I can increase the mids, increase the presence, whereas for this area, I'll probably reduce it, or here I'm going to increase some more saturation. You are going to do this depending on your track. Sometimes it will not be nice if you add too much of saturation, then it's going to be oversaturated and it's going to sound very processed. So add very subtle saturation and split it in the right way. Pretty wide splits and not too narrow splits, then it's going to again sound very odd. So split them like this and then add whatever level of saturation that you need. And right after this is done, so go to the sends. Don't add reverb directly here. At least when you're beginning to do this process, you might get stuck with lot of reverb and your ears as a beginner might perceive that to sound good, but that's actually muddying your track. Come down to this sends and create a new bus track. So go to bus, select an empty bus. And that gets selected here. So you can rename it and put reverb. And I'm going to add a reverb here. I have added Valhalla plate reverb. A trick to use the right amount of reverb in your track is to put it based on your tempo. Of course, when you use a karaoke track, you can always Google the tempo of that song and you will get it. So if you find that the tempo is 120 beats per minute, so what you need to do now is go to Google and type reverb and delay calculator. Click the first link and this will help us set the right timings for the reverb and the delay with respect to the tempo of a song. So you just input the tempo, the BPM, in my case if it is 120, and let's say you want to use a preset, you want the reverb to sound from a very small room. Go to a small room and probably I'm going to choose studio vocal. So since you want to mimic a small room setup, in reverb, if you see, there's a preset that says small room. So we're going to pay attention to these two settings, the pre-delay and the decay time. So it's 15 milliseconds and 984 milliseconds decay time. So set that here. So my pre-delay was 15 milliseconds. I'm just going to double click and put 15. And my decay, so it's in seconds. So this in terms of seconds becomes 0.98, which is rounding off to 1. That's totally okay. All the other things you can set it however you like the size or the low frequency or high frequencies that you want to cut or boost in this reverb, modulation, all those things you can change it according to whatever you think is sounding good. In the mix dial, keep it to the full volume, that's 100%. Suppose you don't know what to change in a stock reverb, I'll show you that as well. So in chroma verb, again the same things that you set are the pre-delay and decay time based on the tempo. So here you see a knob called wet. Always keep that to 100% and dry always keep it to 0%. First of all, in order to set all these things, you need to hear the reverb. And therefore there's this knob next to this bus channel, right? Just click and drag it up. And don't add too much of reverb. This is basically like I'm allowing so much of signal into the reverb channel. Of course, if I send more reverb is going to be heard. So set this accordingly. Like what I like to do is keep it to 0. While the track is being played, just raise it till whatever you think is sounding good. And after adding reverb, I always add an EQ below the reverb and I cut the lows. Just because reverb gives you more layers of vocals because it's mimicking an ambience and it's sort of giving you space and depth. And because of that, additional low frequencies might get added. And you may think I've cut everything here, so why should I do it here? It still does happen in a reverb because you get layers of vocals, like you get echoes and all that. So it's better to put a low cut. This is the process that I do, but suppose you want to do more reverb, what you can do is have a shorter reverb for this. Like we saw for the small room, this was a decay time. So maybe this will be my short reverb. You can add another bus. So let's go to bus 2 and you can add another reverb, but this time you can take a preset like a hall or an ambience or something. So I'm gonna try a concert hall. And if you want to mimic a large room like a concert hall, these are the settings you keep. Pre-delay to 31 and decay to 1.96 seconds. So set them here, again put EQ, cut it and send the right amount of level inside. You've basically completed mixing your vocal track. And now we're going to have to level the vocal track with the karaoke track. I'm not going to interfere anything with the karaoke track. Like I'm not going to put EQ or compressor, anything on it because that's an already mixed and mastered track. What I will, however, do is open the mixer window. Instead of stereo out, I'm just going to route it differently. I'm going to click this. I'm going to create a new bus. So I'm going to choose a bus that's empty. Let's select bus 3. Let's rename this as vocal output. I'm also going to send the 2 reverbs that I added onto this vocal output. So let's go quickly do that. Alright, so I have this channel strip that's kind of acting like the stereo out for the vocal track alone. Anything and everything related to the vocal track is going over here. So what I usually do on this track is I add a limiter. So dynamics and then limiter, stereo, and I'm going to increase the vocal level in a way where it is matching correctly with the karaoke track. That's because initially the vocal will be recorded in a level around -6 dB or -7 dB because we would have gain staged and all those stuff. But then if the karaoke track is in 0 dB, then obviously there's a huge difference here. Karaoke will sound too loud and your vocal will sound too soft. So I'm going to balance it out. Therefore, I add a limiter in this new bus output that I created for the vocal track. I'm going to set my output level, which kind of acts like, the ceiling. I'm going to put that to -1. I'm going to increase the gain till this -1 is reached. So what will happen is as I keep increasing the gain, the input volume obviously will be increased. In my output, the maximum volume I'll get is only around -1 because I've set that as my ceiling. So continue increasing your gain till the output is around -1. And obviously if you go beyond that, there will be a reduction because let's say you go beyond -1. This limiter will try to limit any sound that goes beyond -1 to -1. So if there is a 2 dB increase, then it will reduce it to 2 dB. If it's 6 dB increase, it will reduce it to 6 dB. And that is shown in this column. I would suggest making sure that this reduction is not beyond 5 dB or 6 dB. Otherwise, it's going to be like a too much compression that's happening. Make sure the processing is done correctly so that automatically as you increase gain, within like 1 dB or 2 dB reduction itself, you're reaching that -1 output level. This is one thing. So once you add this limiter on the vocal output, I suggest you add a limiter on the track where you have the karaoke also. So just add a limiter and also give the same output level as -1. So the reason why I'm trying to put -1 dB and not 0 dB is because sometimes even after putting the ceiling at 0 dB, there is a chance that some signal might go even to 0.1, 0.2 and even higher dB levels. And so I just want to make sure that it's in the right safe radar. So some people prefer putting the ceiling in -0.5, some prefer -0.9. I generally do it in -1 and it's working well. So I just want to make sure that the karaoke track level and the vocal level both are around -1 so that even if it goes beyond that, it's still in the safe space. So once you do that, all your tracks will finally enter into the stereo out. So you can just export that and use that. Listen to that track on your phone, on speakers, on your car speaker and different other stereo outputs. See if it's sounding well. In case you feel like, oh, the bass is too loud or the high frequencies are too soft, or any of those changes, come back over here and change those settings, export it and see if it's sounding nice everywhere. So this is how you mix vocal tracks with a karaoke track. If you have better ideas or if you think something else works, you can just drop them in the comments and we can all grow as a community. So I hope this video was useful. I hope you learned something valuable through this video. If this worked out for your tracks, then please do let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Never stop learning, keep making music, and I'll see you guys in another video.